You might think a BMW is a good car to buy. Yes, they are packed full of modern technology, but that's the reason I tell people not to buy these BMWs. Because under the hood are layers and layers of technology. And as you can see, the hood struts don't even work anymore. Those are broken. So we'll get our plastic stick out. Yeah. Old technology for new technology. Let's take this BMW as an example, and pretty much a sterling example of the high technology and the problems they have. This is a 2008 335i. It has all the bells and whistles. It's a straight 6-cylinder engine, but it puts out 300 horsepower using technology. It's an inline 6, kind of an old design. It has 2 turbochargers on it to make it have power. And if they go bad, and bad they do, the turbochargers are over $3,000 a piece, over $2,000 labor, so you're looking at over $8 grand if they go bad. Now, the original owner of this car paid $45,000 up for this thing, and my customer bought it for $13,500, and it had like 40,000 miles on it. So you think, oh, what a deal. Well, the price alone tells you it's not a deal. Before he met me, he said, Scotty, I thought I was getting a deal, but then every time I take it in, it's $1,000 for this, $2,000 for that. Now, yes, they are maintenance heavy vehicles. They cost a lot of money to maintain. Anybody who actually knows how to work on these has to have some extremely sophisticated equipment that costs a ton of money. And as far as I'm concerned, a lot of it has to do with the overuse of plastics in these things. One of the first companies used plastic for just about everything. With these BMWs, it doesn't matter the mileage, age destroys the plastics. Heat of the engine under the hood, the stuff cracks and comes apart. If you ever have to work on one of these when it gets to be older, this one's 12 years old now, you gotta be really careful working around the engine, because you can easily start snapping off plastic parts. They're so brittle. And then when you find these little plastic parts cost $300, $500, some of them well over $1,000 when you include labor, because you got to take half the car apart to get to them. These things are notorious for getting oil leaks around the oil filter. You might think, oh, no big deal, they're just gaskets in there. Well, some of these things, it's over $1,000 labor taking all the crap off to get to the stupid gasket. Now, in the case of this particular one, it's here because it's not shifting right. Now, I have equipment for this stuff, and as you can see, we're now in the transmission. You can check variables, shifting, you can check solenoids, you can see what the adaptation values are, even find all the code numbers so you can look it up if perhaps there's a recall for your particular vehicle. Most guys that have this equipment, they're paying a ton for the stuff. You're going to pay a ton to have your car worked on. And a lot of guys won't even touch it. And they'll say, take it to the dealer. And you know what they charge at the dealer. Now, in this case, I did a lot of testing. Drove it around. So as you can see, there's a lot of data that needs to be looked at while the car's being driven. I was able to do a bunch of actuation tests to see if the solenoid valves are working right and what kind of data's in it. And unfortunately, in the case of this one, there were no error codes for the transmission. The data was all relatively normal. So I thought, well, I know how these things are. I took a sample of the transmission fluid. Now, it's a sealed transmission, so even that was a pain in the butt. There's no dipstick. I had to go under or open up some stuff and take a sample. And I took it to a good friend of mine who analyzes oil. He said that there was too much metal in the oil, meaning parts of the transmission were starting to wear out. It hasn't yet tripped any codes, and the adaptations so far are normal for a 12-year-old BMW. But this tells me transmission's starting to wear out. Oil analysis is a great tool for seeing what kind of a shape a vehicle is in. Both engine, transmission, differential, whatever. When it's analyzed by somebody who knows what they're talking about, they're going to find it out, and you can know ahead of time. It's a good predictor. So in this case, the occasional missed shift and stuff, hey, that's a sign of internal wear. When I checked those solenoids driving around, we'd activate them, they were all working, and there weren't any codes for any of them going bad. It's starting to wear out. Now for this particular one, it's 12 years old, BMW offers what they call a fully remanufactured factory transmission. It's about $6,500. And with labor, at least at the BMW dealer, that's pretty close to what the 2 turbos cost to go. $7,000 something. You buy a beautiful looking car like this used, you are playing with dynamite. You never know what's gonna blow and when it's gonna go. Yes, the Germans put in interesting technology. These lower profile tires, they really handle well, but being lower profile, Guess what? In the city, these things are destroyed. The rims get destroyed. All that stuff costs a small fortune when it goes out. Now that technology is fine at the racetrack because racetracks are pretty smooth. They go really fast, they make them well, they're smooth. They don't have giant potholes in them, curbs that you're gonna smash into. And this particular model being a beautiful convertible, there are convertible modes. There's a module for the convertible top, fault codes. You can even read the data stream of the convertible system. We are talking uber rocket science technology, even on a convertible top system for this thing. Now, maybe you just love the technology of one of these things. If you really love it and have to have it, take Scotty's advice. Lease one. Don't buy it. If you feel you can afford the lease payments, you're not gonna have to repair the thing. You have to worry about all that stuff. Something breaks. They generally don't break that fast. If you look at their insanely low resale value, I mean, this thing was well over $40,000 new, and when it had 40,000 miles, it went for $13,500. There's a reason behind that low resale value. And if you would have bought it new and then sold it to somebody with 40,000 miles and lost 30-something thousand dollars on the deal, you'd have wished, hey, I should have leased that thing. I shouldn't have bought it. Now, I do have to say, I have customers with BMWs that are totally happy with the cars, but most of them are doctors, lawyers. They lease the vehicle under a business scenario where it's pre-tax money, so they don't have to pay tax on some of their salary, or the business itself is leasing it and they're getting the car for free. What do they care? One, their doctors and lawyers have tons of money, and two, it's a business write-off. But if you're counting your pennies and you're thinking about buying one of these things used, my advice is just keep saying to yourself, endless money pit, endless money pit, endless money pit. I had a mechanic friend years ago. Met at an auto parts store one day, and he said, hey, look at this great deal I got on this BMW for one of my customers. He didn't want me to fix it anymore, so he sold it to me at a really good price. Well, the problem with my friend there was he mainly worked on American cars. He didn't know that much about BMWs. I saw him about a year later, and I said, how's that BMW working out for you? He said, that plastic piece of crap, I got rid of it last month. I couldn't stand it anymore. All the plastic stuff kept breaking, the parts cost a fortune. I'll never buy another one of those. And this is a mechanic. Granted, he worked mainly on American cars. He liked the look of a BMW convertible and thought, oh, what a cool car. But in the long run, not so cool. And if you're thinking about getting a diesel BMW here in the United States, realize hardly anybody knows how to work on the things. And of course, the parts cost a small fortune, but they are probably the most complex diesel systems out there. When I get them in here, invariably, after I scan it, tell the customer, well, here's what we're gonna start with. They say, I'm just gonna get rid of the thing. I'm sick of this car anyways. Now, yes, they are beautiful cars, but sometimes beauty can be deceiving. 2008 Mercedes-Benz SLK 55 AMG V8 engine, although it's really dirty today. What kind of shape is it in? Customer wants to know. He's had it for 3 years, hasn't put any money in it yet. Is it worth putting more money into it? Or is it time to say bye-bye? Now, it is a fast little sports car, but because of the weight and the power, it gets about 13 miles a gallon in the city, 19 on the highway. So it's pretty much a gas hog for a tiny little car. So out comes a serious scan tool, plug it in. As you can see, it's no different than any other car. You just find a plug. Now it's on. You can see the lights are glowing. Well, just turn the key on. So the idiot lights are on and it's not running. I'll go to Mercedes, automatically search. You can get all kinds of information here. We can tell here, it's not a fake AMG. Sometimes guys stick badges on, but by the serial number, this is an actual AMG. We'll do a system scan, and away it goes. And while we're waiting for the scan, I mean, it's a typical Mercedes. Even though it's 08 and somewhat older, there are switches, buttons, all kinds of controls here. Here we have the adjustments here. This is a convertible, but it's metal. It's a true two-seater. Now, when you look at the dash, we can see it says it's got 78,000 miles on it. You can see on the data on the top, 78,096 miles. No one's cheated on the speedometer on this one like people often will. So this is the real mileage. 12 years old. It's only got 78,000 miles. That's a good sign. Scan didn't find anything wrong. Now it's going through a health report to see if there's any codes on anything. Unlike many other cars, the Mercedes have various steps and various levels of analytics. If some clown at an auto parts store plugs a machine in this thing and says, oh no, it's fine, there's no trouble codes, that doesn't mean anything. That's the tip of the iceberg. There's various levels that you need these fancy machines for to really analyze one of these cars. See, there's red things coming up now. They're all green on the other test, but now there's things we're going to look at. Okay, let's check it out. We got a lot of reds. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 16, 26, 36, 37, 38, 4, 45, 48, 50. So it's got 53 codes going on here. Let's see if any of them are serious. We got problems with electronic stability. Program that's typical on these. Control module not identified. CAN communication is faulty. That the electronic ignition switch has an under voltage. The roof has voltage problem. The overhead control panel, CAN reception, the controller area network, that's the computer wiring system. Problem with the mirror automatically dimming. Control unit supply is too low. Control panel faults, switches closed. Supply voltage is too low. We're getting that a lot. So there's obviously some type of electrical short where it's not getting enough power. Short circuits and some of the lighting. Then there's 10 for the SAM, that's the signal acquisition mode. Then the audio system has 5 things. I see that all the time in these audio gateway. They're so complicated. Door module has a little problem. Electronic seat adjust with memory has problems. Convenience automatic air conditioning. Fan temperature sensor problem. Supply voltage is low. But all these other ones here, they're normal. Now what does all that say? Well, that says it's a typical Mercedes that's 12 years old. It has electronic flaws. So let's start it up. Look at some of the live data. There's so much data on these things. Make your head spin. Test engine at idle speed. And here's the data. It's all pretty normal. Nothing weird. Now we'll check the values at idle speed. See if anything's oddball here. Everything's pretty normal. Big advantage of these machines, the fancy ones like this, they're color coded. If there is a fault, it's going to be a different color. It's not going to be that blue. I can see that right away that they're within specs, but I can look at them individually too and analyze them with what I know. I don't trust the machines all the time. Now I do notice under the hood when I rev up, you can hear a little groan. When I turn the wheel, power steering pump's groaning a little, which is kind of typical on these as they age. If it's not low on fluid, these things often groan a little bit. If you're an absolute fanatic, you replace the pump. But I've seen them go years and years, and they whine, steer fine. Who cares? Go a little bit further to data, signal from the cam's okay. Everything so far is pretty good for a vehicle of its age. So let's go under the hood. Check that out. We'll roll the window down so we don't get locked out. We close the door. That's an important thing. And we'll check under the hood. Well, we need a rod. That doesn't work. No, the hydraulics cost a fortune. This costs 50 cents, so stick one in your trunk. There, nice and solid now. We'll take a look under here. Get out of the way. Look at the power steering fluid over here. It's full of fluid, it's not leaking. So it groans a little. Who cares? It works fine. I spent all that money on something that still works perfectly fine. Now as we look around, other than this bird feather, must have been a cat around here somewhere. It's in pretty decent shape. There's no major leaks or anything. The front looks pretty clean. There's no cracked plastic parts from being wrecked and smacked up. Now the headlights have a little fade on them. That's typical. You can polish them off if you want. No, let's face it. You don't get a 2-seater to haul people around. There's no back seat. You want a cute little 2-seater to toy around with for that kind of money? If you don't pile the mileage on, it can actually be a decent toy to fool around with. It's worth putting brakes on it, and eventually it's going to need struts on it. It rides a little bit sloppy, but it's nothing outrageous. Now let's check the undercarriage. Pretty clean. Got those fancy tires on it. No, I'm not a fan of these low profile tires because they have a tendency of riding a little bit rough. They handle great, but they ride a little rough and they cost a fortune when they finally go out. A Geladenwagen, or Mercedes G-Wagon. Now, they've been making these things for a long time, since 1979. People used to import them to the United States from Germany because they didn't sell them here, but they have sold them here. And strangely enough, from 2013 to 2015, they actually made 69 pickup versions of the thing. Now, they technically call them SUVs now, but Geladenwagen really means terrain car. Hey, it's all-wheel drive. It's set to go through some serious terrain. Now, the original list price of the G550 was well over $100,000. They're expensive vehicles, there's no doubt in that. But look, you get the chrome spare tire cover. There it is. You want easy access to the back? Well, it doesn't get much easier than this. You can climb right in. Like everything else, the seats fold back if you want. And this baby is tall. You got a lot of height in this thing. Now, the original G-Wagons were handmade by Magnus Steyr in Austria, and guess what? They still are. Now, it's got a big V8 engine. We take some of this plastic crap out of the way. Fully loaded one is over 6,600 pounds. This is over a 3-ton vehicle. With all this power and all this weight, the combined rating, 13 miles a gallon. You're lucky if you get 10 in one of these things in town. You do not buy these things for gas mileage. Now, this one was recently purchased used. The 4th owner of this vehicle. They come, they go. If we look at the odometer, got almost 148,000 miles on it. And it's sold for less than 20% of its original list price, which is totally logical with any Mercedes, but especially with these. They don't sell that many of them. Between 3,000 and 4,000 a year. The parts aren't cheap. So Mercedes are not cheap, and on a lower production model, they tend to be even more expensive. Now, this particular one, from what the new owner tells me, came from New York State. Doesn't surprise me. I can see the corrosion. Now, this is just superficial rust, but when we go further down, even the structural bolts, they're starting to show some rust on them. And we go to the other side. Hey, we can see the ABS system's got quite a bit of corrosion there, down here. And the lines coming off the brake master cylinder, you can see they're really getting corroded. That's why if you're buying a used G-Wagon or really any other car, it's a better idea to do the opposite of this vehicle. You don't want to buy a vehicle that started out in New York State and ended up in Texas. You would want to buy a vehicle that started out in Texas and then you imported it to New York State. That's a smarter move. But on the positive side of this whole thing, look, everything's still metal, even in 2012. There isn't a bunch of plastic crap. All these parts are made out of metal. The oil cooler, everything's made out of metal. It's not plastic. Even the oil filter that's hiding in here, that cap comes off, the cap is plastic on all the new cars. Not on this, it's still metal. The Austrians have put this thing together. Hey, they did build a solid vehicle. There's no arguing that. And when we go underneath, this is one solid vehicle. You can see it doesn't have modern CV joints. It's got the old-fashioned ones made out of steel. These things are solid. And of course, when we go to the back side, the big solid rear end. These are hefty vehicles. But again, since I lived in New York State, check this out. Some of these components on the frame and stuff, hey, they're rotting away. They got some rust on them. That kind of amazes me about the Germans. Their anti-corrosion stuff, it isn't what it should be. My mother lives in Buffalo. She's got a Toyota Corolla. 6 years older than this. Doesn't have any of that rust on it. They actually did the rust proofing better than the Germans did. So if you're looking at a used German car, you really got to check for rust. Really, they just don't do the corrosion inhibitors, in the past at least. Companies like Toyota and Honda did that don't have the rusting problem. And now comes the real test, the electronics test. Got the old scan tool hooked up. We're going to see what's really inside this thing. I think it'd be alphabetical, but it's not there. Mercedes is first. Figure that one out. We'll do a little diagnosis here. It's going to take a while because there's a lot of stuff that these things scan. As you can see, it's only 9% done now. Well, it's getting there. It's at 93%. So far, it's found a lot of codes. We're going to count them up when it's done. Lots of fault codes, so we're going to count them all. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45 separate trouble codes. Now, granted, some of them are related to each other, but this is typical when I get any of these German cars. When they get to be the age of this thing, they're going to have problems up the wazoo. Some of them you'll live with, and some of them you can't live with. I'm going to look at a few of the more serious ones here. Such as the electronic transmission control. It's got a code for the voltage on the terminals low. CAN communication with other control modules is impossible, meaning there's a problem with either the wiring or the computer modules to the transmission. The electronic stabilization, which is a big deal, has problems. Signal is implausible or lost. Steering angle sensors is initialized. Now, these are big, tall vehicles. They put all that stuff in them so they don't tip over. Well, this system obviously is not working right. It can cost a fortune to repair these things. You have to realize you're buying one of these old things. A lot of those systems aren't going to work correctly anymore. It has a problem with the signal activation module, and it's got all kinds of problems with the wiring for the beams. Realize on this thing, even the headlights are controlled by computers. These things just will drive you nuts if you want a perfect car. Live in Texas like me, the automatic air conditioning has problems too, and that's a big deal here. So you have to realize, buying any used Mercedes, it's a big gamble to begin with. But one of these G-Wagons, you are looking at an electronic rat's nest as they age. Just to take a perfect example, I showed you some corrosion on the vehicle. All that wiring has wiring connectors on it. You get a little bit of corrosion on any of those wires, it'll start giving weird feedback to the computer, and you can get a lot of codes like that. So if you want a vehicle that's perfectly operating, you would spend the same amount of money you pay for the car in order to fix all those things. So realize, if you're going to buy a G-Wagon, especially a used one, you can't have it to impress people about how rich you are, because you'll probably be spending a bunch of your money fixing it if you keep it for years and put some serious mileage on them. These are not cheap to repair or maintain vehicles. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.